We are so quick to talk about our macros, myself included. I find sometimes that there's a misunderstanding of what we do inside of the Fitness Fix, making people believe that our number one tool to help you get the results that you desire, to help you improve your relationship with food, is everything to do with tracking your meals. That is maybe a third of it. It's important. I'm not going to say it's like less than 30% of the equation, but here's where I think we all owe it to ourselves to shift our focus to our emotions, specifically to your nervous system.
Let's link up with Krysta on The Fix. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
What's up, Fix listeners? Welcome back to our latest episode of The Fix. I'm your host, Krysta Huber. I've got my sidekick Bean here with me today if you are checking us out on YouTube. And she is very relevant, I would say, a main character in this story for today's podcast and little mini teaching moment that I have for your Thursday of the week, building on last week's conversation around language and the way you not only talk to yourself, but the words you choose to describe your circumstances. And while I got a lot into how that is important in allowing you to kind of reach your next level and being able to maximize your capacity to do new things, to do hard things, to do things that feel uncomfortable for you right now just because they're not familiar, whether that's macro tracking, focusing on having a better relationship with food, whether it's starting a business, whether it's going after a new job, any area in life where it's something that's different, that is seemingly uncomfortable, we got to stretch ourselves a little bit. Because our brains are so wired for safety, we're always going to look for the familiar. So if you didn't check out that episode, I would encourage you to listen to it because I think these two conversations really complement each other very well back to back, just trying to get you to see things from different angles and how the way we think does show up in the rest of our life. But then even more than that, why macros alone, it's just simply not enough. I am so big on tracking food. I am so set on the concept of having awareness in place to be able to help you better understand how food fits together. Right before I recorded this exact conversation, I was scrolling through Instagram, thinking about a few different conversations I've had this week, and really for this one, what's happened in my own day-to-day and my own schedule over the last few days. And something that just, of course, came up as I was scrolling is a fellow nutrition coach who I've had on the show multiple times, somebody I've worked with closely before, talking about why intuitive eating is not the best advice for somebody who is looking to work their way towards eating intuitively. And that's because most of us don't do a good job of managing our emotions, to the point where I commented on this post and said, dare I argue that emotional regulation is more important than macros. So we're going to argue it in these next 12, 15 minutes while Bean and I sit here and talk about the week that we had. Now, if you follow me on Instagram and if you're also on our Fix email list, you've heard versions and flavors of this story already about my fridge not cooperating a couple of days ago and waking up to a lot of my meal prep that was spoiled. And I talked about reframing, and I talked about on both of those channels, how to really think about what's coming your way as an opportunity to increase your capacity and remind yourself that you're not given things that you can't handle. And these are opportunities to respond or react. The best scenario being to respond every single time. But we're also human beings. And I am not going to lie to you guys because there's no purpose in doing that. For as much as I was sitting there telling myself that everything would be fine, there were still moments where I was having a little bit of an internal freak out. So this podcast episode, you're going to get the whole range of emotions of what we were experiencing over the course of this week. Now, to set the scene, it is not nearly as dramatic as I may be with this buildup, but it is something that did throw a considerable wrench in my week, not once, but twice, and has kind of spanned now over the last 4 days of just something that keeps coming up. So here's what happened. Wednesday morning, I woke up to Miss Bean right here having had a little accident on the floor. And that had been an occurrence like pretty much every morning for the 4 days prior. So wasn't getting the best night's sleep, and also just wasn't a fan of feeling like she regressed all the way back to when she was a little puppy. And we used to wake up and have to walk around your apartment like it's a landmine and you don't know where the next little puddle is going to show up. So never fun, but nonetheless, this is a part of dog ownership. It happens. Literally shit happens, right? And we just got to move on, clean it up. It took 30 seconds of my day. However, this was weighing on me emotionally because she has been a little bit sick throughout this year. And the fact that she was starting to have some issues with her bladder again alerted me to some of the problems that she was experiencing like 6 months ago. And that put naturally a heightened state of emotions and worry in my mind because this is my pet and I want to make sure that she's okay. Can't communicate with me. So it's hard for me to really figure out how she's actually feeling, other than the fact that I just keep seeing these symptoms come up. The good news, as an aside, is that she's doing much better and we seem to be in the clear, but knock on wood, that continues to be the case. So moved on from that one pretty quickly because it's just been par for the course. However, here's the big drama that then occurred. I opened my refrigerator door like 20 minutes after I woke up and I'm like, it seems a little bit warm in here. Didn't think too much of it because the temperature at the top read like it was still 40 something degrees. And I was like, maybe something's just off. Let me go reset the circuit breaker. I tried that. And then I opened my freezer. And when I opened my freezer, I discovered that my freezer was not even close to frozen. It was room temperature. And because it was room temperature, a lot of the food that I had in the freezer was now ruined. And I started to question whether maybe the fridge might be affected by this too. So I was like, all right, I don't want to be missing my workout. I was scheduled to go to the gym, to go to my class that I go to twice a week. And I was like, I don't want this to throw a wrench to my day, but I'm also kind of like standing here debating, do I move my food? The silver lining of all of this is that my brother lives in my apartment complex. So again, it was not the end of the world. I had backup plans and I started strategizing because I knew I technically had another refrigerator that I could access to ideally attempt to save a lot of my meal prep, because keep in mind, this happened only on Wednesday of last week. So I still had a good like 2.5 days worth of food. And I was not about to rearrange my schedule for the rest of the day and think through trying to go pick up new food or factor in something else for my meal prep, because I was like locked and loaded on Sunday and I felt the initial, like FU universe for testing me right now, because I was prepared and I was ready to go. So why you got to do me like that? That's immediately where my brain went to. Submit a request for my apartment complex to ask them to please come look at it, thinking that that would be pretty quick. It ultimately took more than a day. And to make a long story, let's say medium, I wound up getting in touch with them and I wound up getting myself a brand new refrigerator. So I'm like, okay, cool. Everything's solved. And the message that I shared on social media had a lot to do with the fact that, like, let's look for those silver linings. Let's look for these opportunities to be able to respond rather than react. Look for the solutions, because complaining about this situation was by no means going to put me in a position that was going to solve it, right? I had to take action. And I knew that given that I had a busy day, I have other people on my team, I have clients that are relying on me. I have a responsibility as a business owner to keep my cool. The same way any of you out there who are listening, who you're in leadership positions at your job, you are a leader in your household as a parent, it is a huge priority on your back to keep yourself regulated for all of the people that are relying on you. So anybody, no matter what your roles are in life, can totally relate to this feeling of like what is actually a lot of pressure to convince yourself that everything is fine, to the point where this is where I think we have a problem. Think about this situation that I'm describing. And where it only kind of exacerbated itself was I woke up 2 days later on Sunday morning to discover that now everything was way too cold in my new fridge. Eventually got that fixed, and that is besides the point. But the real lesson in all of this is we are so quick to talk about our macros, myself included. I find sometimes that there's a misunderstanding of what we do inside of the Fitness Fix, making people believe that our number one tool to help you get the results that you desire, to help you improve your relationship with food, is everything to do with tracking your meals. That is maybe a third of it. It's important. I'm not going to say it's like less than 30% of the equation, but here's where I think we all owe it to ourselves to shift our focus to our emotions, specifically to your nervous system. And let's use my own personal scenario to play this out. My fridge being on the fritz, knowing my macros in no shape or form was going to allow me to solve that situation. Knowing my macros was not going to trump the feelings that I had of shit. I'm annoyed. I'm now a little bit stressed. And all I want to do is probably go have something like a burger because that's what I'm craving. But I also knew at the same time that that wasn't going to serve me. And because I knew that that wasn't going to serve me, I recognized that there were other tools at play here, like how I was talking to myself, just as I outlined in last week's episode. I had a choice to think about my macros, yes, to recognize that if, let's say, in a worst case scenario, my dinner was completely spoiled, I did have to pivot and decide to then go get something out to eat. Do my macros help me make the best decision in that exact scenario? 100%. And that is why I do believe they are such a powerful tool, because when you don't understand how your foods fit together, you will not make as educated of a decision of the person who does when they're faced with the same situation. But above that, being able to regulate your emotions and having practices in place to regulate your emotions, I would argue, matters more than your actual macros themselves, because your ability to regulate your emotions is what is going to encourage you to maintain your consistency and to maintain your discipline. And over the last like 5 or 6 solo episodes that I've done, in reflecting on each of them and some of the points I've been making about why thinking that you need a break is actually self-sabotaging, why telling yourself that you're too busy is another form of self-sabotaging. What I really am recognizing is the ultimate theme here is that so many of us are bogged down and feeling so overloaded by notifications, whether it's from work, whether it's from social media, maybe just distractions that you don't even actually need in your life, the responsibilities that you uphold, that while we think the next solution is for us to potentially pull back and take a break, what I really recognize is that is a sign for you to lean into support. In this case, and yes, that is my bias showing as a coach, but it's the thought process of like, why would you run away from all of the tools the minute that you feel overwhelmed? There's only one answer: because the tools themselves are not addressing your overwhelm. So let's give you some tools that are going to do just that. And I want you to walk away from this episode within the next 5 minutes and have 4 different techniques that you can literally keep in your back pocket. But from there, I'm also going to challenge you to actually implement them, because me sharing this on these episodes, sharing any of these episodes, if you don't go do something with it, then it doesn't have the power if you actually integrate it into your routine. And that's where coaching becomes a tool to use it in and of itself, because we provide that support. We provide that accountability inside of the Fitness Fix to encourage you to integrate that into your routine. And for our clients out there who are listening to this, for those of you who have not had these conversations with Coach Alyssa and I, if for whatever reason you still have this belief that you're coming to us specifically for meal ideas and macros, let's open up this conversation a little bit more, because I recognize this from talking to a potential client earlier today before recording this, that what's like the number one predictor of success with our clients? It's openness to be vulnerable and share when you're feeling overwhelmed, so that we actually have an understanding of that, versus you retreating, avoiding, thinking that there's just too many different things to report on top of everything else that's happening in your life. I get that. I feel you 100%. I have a nutritionist that I work with too. Some days I don't want to fill out the spreadsheet that she asks me to fill out, but I carve out time to do it. And that's because I'm putting on my own coaching hat and coaching myself a little bit to say, okay, if I was one of my clients right now, how might I set up my schedule or simplify the way that I'm communicating with this coach? And if I don't have the answer to that question, the first thing I'm doing is going and asking the coach. So yeah, I've got that little bit extra level and perspective that you, as somebody who isn't a coach yourself, may not have. But what I'm offering to you is you hearing my own story to reflect yourself back into that story and say to yourself, okay, retreating or avoiding or saying I need a break, is that potentially a cover for fear of like, I can't handle all of these things. And that goes back to last week's episode around language and the way you're talking to yourself. And while, yes, I want to tell you and I want to convince you that just reminding yourself that you are capable, that you do have these opportunities, I want you to believe that for yourself. I know that's also not enough. And I want this second kind of part 2 of last week's conversation to really help you with more of the tangible and the actionable steps that you can take to start to just calm the fuck down. Like, there's really no better way of saying it, because I really feel that if you cannot get to a state where you feel that internal sense of peace, and it's not meant to be constant, it's not meant to be something that you can live in every day, because I get that that's not realistic either. But when you get to a place where you can find ways to bring yourself back to center and do it quickly, that's how you're going to be able to handle the broken fridge, the dog pee on the floor, your kid calling you when they're in the middle of their school day and they got sick and they need to come home, your Slack channel or your team channel at work blowing up and you needing to jump back in and take care of it. You've got to have a 2-minute practice, a 3-minute practice, a close your eyes and count to 5 practice in place to help yourself keep going and keep moving forward. And I think, unfortunately, with the speed and pace and the expectation that so many of you women out there, myself included, put on ourselves today, we just try to bulldoze past all of that. And we're like, oh, well, we're going to get this done and we have to worry about it later. So I got 4 little tips, wrote them down so I can read them off to you, how to think about it. And here are my quick tools. Again, emphasis on quick. I'm not trying to get you into a state where you now feel like you've got another thing on your to-do list, when that is the whole like gripe for a lot of people in the first place about why they don't even want to track their food, let alone think about regulating their nervous system. So first one, a little body scan. How do you do a body scan? As the name implies, I like to kind of start from the top of my head and then work my way down. And this is just bringing awareness back to yourself, and it can help you get out of your own thoughts, because the anxiousness and the feelings of worry are actually a result of you thinking about things that haven't even happened yet. So scanning your body brings you right back into the present moment, so that in that present moment, you are fully in touch with you and your nervous system is able to just basically take that breath. So you're just like thinking about the top of your head. Sometimes I like to do this as if I'm envisioning like a light. That was the way this was taught to me when I did this with a coach. A light that's like at the top of my head and it's traveling all through my body. You might close your eyes when you do this and then bring awareness into from your head to your ears, to your nose. You can get as specific and small and granular with it as you want, through your face, through your neck, down to your chest, your shoulders, into your hands, and then all the way through your thighs, ankles, down to the feet. If that's not something that resonates with you, you can also swap in something like some breath work. One of the ones that we often recommend to Fitness Fix clients is box breathing. I like it because it's also quick. It's also very simple. You could do it like literally sitting at your desk. You could do it in your car, and you think about it like the shape of a box. So you're going to inhale for 3 to 4 seconds, hold your breath for 3 to 4 seconds, exhale it for 3 to 4 seconds, and then repeat that cycle. You don't need to do that maybe more than 3 times. And I can promise you, you will feel a noticeable shift in your body. So that's number 1. Really has 2 parts to it. Second, reflection questions, because you know I live these. Ask yourself, what can I control right now? In my example, I started thinking about all the things that I can control when I realized that all of my food was about to be wasted for the week. I had a backup plan. I also knew that I could run to any sort of fast casual type restaurant and still make my macros work for me if I absolutely had to. I also knew that I can control my emotions by choosing to go do something, like choosing to go to the gym and not avoid my workout for that day because I felt overloaded and felt like, oh my gosh, now I need to coordinate with my dog and making sure that my apartment is available for somebody to come in and look at it. That was not a reason to stop me from doing my workout. And again, also had access to another fridge. So thinking about controlling the controllables. That's got to be in the mix with this when it comes to regulating your nervous system. Because once again, the anxiety that's talking, what's causing that dysfunction, what's causing that dysregulation is you assuming that things are going to happen before they've even happened. So bringing it right back to where you are right now and literally replanting your feet where they are. Number 3, taking on the perspective of redeciding, I'm kind of making up this word, but deciding again rather than restarting. So that looks like the micro shift or the micro decision to tell yourself that the rest of your day is still going to be a great day if your morning looks like it went to shit. Deciding that you can do that, and this is really what number 4 is, through micro momentum, mini wins. Really resetting yourself and saying, okay, even if the morning didn't look how I wanted it, what are 2 things that I can go do this afternoon? And then once I get through the afternoon, giving myself that gold star, so to speak, to say, hey, I did that and that worked really well for me. And that also made me feel good. Because if you don't reinforce the part for yourself where it made you feel good, well, then you're never going to get this to stick, because then you're just going to feel like you're going through the motions. And we're not here for you to just go through the motions when you are on a mission to make your lifestyle centered around something that is healthy, when you're chasing not just fat loss, but a way to actually live. That's why people are so quick to think, oh, I need a break from tracking my food. That's because you haven't gotten to the point where you feel like you've connected it to something that when you do it, it makes you feel good. And our clients who take that reflection moment and take those times on a weekly or even twice a month basis to just sit back and say, how am I feeling right now based on the decisions that I've made? That's powerful information. That's where you get empowered to continue to make choices that are going to help you. And once again, to give a little bit more of a concrete example, here's how this played out in my own life. Fast forward to Friday, I felt like what happened earlier in the week and how it threw off my schedule. There was plenty of work that didn't get done in the exact time frame that I wanted to. And I was feeling pretty exhausted, but a part of me knew that I needed to recharge my battery. And for as much as I could have sat in front of my computer and gotten a few more things done, I chose to enjoy the beautiful night. It was really great weather, sat outside at an awesome restaurant in Tribeca and had mocktails with a good friend of mine who is also a business owner. So we got to talk about what went on in our week and relate to each other. Putting yourself in community and putting yourself around people who understand what you're going through, that is also a part of regulating your nervous system too. And then fast forward to Saturday, it was a gorgeous day. Once again, I knew that I had some time carved out for work that I wanted to get done, but I also made the decision to just spend an hour going for a walk, because I knew that hour spent going for that walk would actually propel me forward when I did get back in front of my computer to sit down and get that work done again. But you have to look for those moments in your day-to-day. And if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, well, it's easier for you to make those decisions because it's just you and your dog. I promise I have heard that argument 1,000,001 times. And all of our clients that we work with, I am so fortunate to be able to see what it's like for them to navigate some of our suggestions amid parenthood and also working. So I know that if they can do it, I know that you out there, if you're walking through this journey on your own, I know that you can do it too, but it's a choice that nobody can make for you besides you. And yet at the same time, I really wanted to call this out because I want you to recognize that you may be getting yourself stuck in the weeds by thinking that what you need is to focus on macros, when really there's a domino effect that if you help yourself manage your emotions, the focus on your macros, the ability to be more consistent will ultimately be that much easier. And aren't we in a chase for this to feel easier? It's why I always say fat loss isn't easy, but it gets to be simple. But I think the more we emphasize ways that this can be simple, you will get to that state, to that perspective where it does, in fact, feel easier. So through this all, my point is the fridge wasn't the problem. The way I chose to respond to it could have been my problem in derailing my progress over the last week. And did I have a perfect week of hitting my macros? Not exactly, but I nailed it more than 80%. Did I have the best week when it came to my sleep? No. And that was in part because I was somewhat reactive to the situation. I didn't operate from this like super highest version of myself where everything was totally fine and I'm being in this like Zen state. But there is an ebb and flow between the two. And I would argue I'm at least 20% ahead of where I could have been had I chosen to just like sit in my shit and not move on from that. So my challenge to you for this week is look for the moments where you're being tested a little bit. How quickly can you sit in your shit and then move on from it? And if you're recognizing that that's where you actually struggle, and it's resonating with you that like you're saying to yourself, wait a second, maybe it's not about my food choices alone. Maybe it's about these other factors. I want to always invite you and remind you that the Fitness Fix is the place for bringing those other factors into the mix too, and helping you approach it in a way that is not overwhelming, but is allowing you to focus on one component at a time, giving you the hierarchy, just like I laid it out for you in this episode, and then giving you the actual personalized action steps that you can take to keep moving that needle forward. So my DMs are always open. Shoot me a message if there's any part of this you want to talk through in your own life. And if that compels you to want to talk about what nutrition coaching looks like with Coach Alyssa and me, we'd love to welcome you into our community. And with that, from wherever you're listening from, I'll catch you guys next week. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.